Good morning and welcome to the latest EU clusters talks on the future of European competitiveness and the role of clusters. I'm very privileged to be your moderator. I'm Andrew Lansley from Lowe Associates, and I'm very much looking forward to this busy and remarkably interesting set of speakers and panelists that we have with us this morning. We have a very lively potential debate on the report to the European Commission by Mario Draghi, which I know many of you will have read with great interest. Clearly, he has established in his report the role that clusters could play in promoting innovation and enhancing productivity, in giving access to more resilient supply chains, and in bringing forward digital and green transformations. But we're going to have the opportunity today for expert views on the report and indeed for a panel discussion drawing on the clusters themselves. I hope during the course of our debate this morning, you have an opportunity to contribute. We will ask 3 questions when we run towards the panel, and I look forward to your contributions there. If you have other contributions at any stage, please either use the Q&A to put up a question or indeed use the chat function perhaps to comment or indeed to provide links or ask questions, and I can see them there. If you wish to speak, raise your hand, and if time permits, I will give you the opportunity to ask your question in person. We are being recorded. Do be aware that all of the contributions will be recorded today. Audience participation is a key part, and we look forward to that. We also have a very interesting panel discussion later. But as we run into that, as always with the cluster talks, we're looking very much forward both to news from the cluster collaboration platform and indeed later on future opportunities. But for now, I'm very pleased to introduce Angela, who from the team on the European Cluster Collaboration Platform will provide some of the latest news. Angela.
Thank you, Andrew, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, we would like to start reminding you can still apply for the next Cluster Booster Academy. We still have time until 17 October, and this academy involves up to 50 participants, and it will run for 5 days. It's a hybrid format, and it includes an individual coaching session. We have 3 days, 6th, 11th, and 15th of November, the coaching session, and also 2 days in person training sessions, 3-4 March 2025. In this academy, you can acquire learning opportunities for cluster managers. The academy meets the need of European cluster management teams in your daily work. It offers the cluster management teams a chance to learn from each other's experiences. It provides also the opportunity to co-shape the new European value chain, and it helps in developing, amongst others, better policy related to clusters. Also, we invite you to save the date for the upcoming clusters mid-regions. We invite you to join this offer of the European cluster collaboration platforms. These are transnational events that bring together clusters and policymakers at different levels, local, regional, and national, with the aim of strengthening the industrial ecosystems. And this facilitates the implementation of good practices and promote collaboration. You have the dates already for Moldova, for Chisinau in October 10, 11th, and Charleroi, Belgium, 27 and 28. And at last, we want to invite you also to contribute with your voices to this survey about the STEP initiative. You can find the link on the chat and also on the slides, and you can have the opportunity to tell European Commission about your challenges either you have participated or not in the programs funded by this initiative, you will be more than welcome to participate and respond to this survey. Thank you, Andrew.
Angela, thank you very much indeed. In order to introduce our discussion and to set the context, we're delighted to have Marek Prior, the team leader from DG Grow, team leader for clusters policy in DG Grow indeed. Marek, please, would you very kindly introduce our discussion this morning?
Thank you very much, and let me just put the context of why we have this session. If you can put the next slide, please. So we have at this very moment, after some storms that the European economy needed to live through in COVID-19 pandemic, when actually it was very revealed that we have our economy is vulnerable to supply chain disruption, when then the war in Ukraine started, to how dependent we are on fossil fuels. This is all very much now coming together with our strategic goals of green and digital transition. And at the same time, our economy, and I want to give you these numbers because very often people forget, is still the third biggest economy in the world. It's 17 trillion euro of GDP. It's 15% of world GDP. Just behind the US, 16%, and China, 19% of world GDP. So we are the third largest economy in the world with 450 citizens and 23 million companies. A huge economy, and no wonder that with all these vulnerabilities and all these signs of geopolitical disruptions and conflicts at this moment, the debate on competitiveness of the EU has started, and we have as well the European political cycle, that we had the European Parliament elections. So it's the period of 2024 and 29 right now from the political cycle, starting with the new Parliament and soon a new European Commission. So with this in view, European Council conclusions of April called for the new European competitiveness deal, and this starts the debate on how competitive the EU is and what should be done in order to make it more competitive in the changing world and environment we are in. Then, with Council conclusions on the future of industrial policy and on single market in May, it goes deeper, calling for a competitive European industry driving our green, digital, and resilient Europe, and a single market for the benefit of all of us. With this, in June, the European Council issued strategic agenda, which gives a kind of indications and guidance from the European Council where we should go. And then, as well, in this document, it clearly calls for bolstering our competitiveness. So competitiveness is now very well in the agenda. In the meantime, of course, there were debates by experts, but the European institutions, the European Council, as the European Commission, asked to experts, one Enrico Letta, to prepare a report on the single market, and another one, Mario Draghi, to prepare the report on the future of European competitiveness. With this were like in the background were going on, and I would like to as well advise you to look at the European Commission political guidelines, where our newly elected for the second mandate President von der Leyen on the 18th of July presented the political guidelines of the new European Commission. And as well, I think very important documents which you could have a look is the one which she presented on the 17th of September. It's all available on the website where she presented new European Commission candidates, because they will be hearing in November, but they all have received mission letters, and one of the mission letters is particularly for the Commissioner for Industry, and there are some elements mentioned worth reading for the cluster managers, because it shows as well where the emphasis will be put. But this is very clear. I can mention some which are highlighted. This is Clean Industrial Deal, Industrial Decarbonization, Net Zero Industry Act, important projects of common European interest, European Competitiveness Fund, public procurement. There will be horizontal single market strategy, work on single market barriers, dedicated SME support, work on small mid-caps, critical raw materials, chemical industry, biotech, steel and metals action plan, standardization, intellectual property, enforcement of foreign subsidies regulation. So these are key points for the commissioner who will supposed to be my commissioner in the future for the digital, for internal and industry, internal market and industry, of course subject to hearings in the European Parliament. But I think this gives you quite a good first views what we are going to do in the period of 2024 and 29. Having said so, we are going to discuss as well on this competitiveness on the basis of mainly Mario Draghi report, the Future of European Competitiveness, and while Enrica Letta report concentrated very much on the single market and very clear need for deepening and our single market, which is not perfect, as our four freedoms of movement of capital, particularly of services, is still not perfect. Then Mario Draghi concentrated on other elements and factors of competitiveness. And I'm happy Athanasios Konstantopoulos from Chorus Cluster in Thessaloniki agreed to give us his first takeaways from reading. He actually read the document, The Future of European Competitiveness, 69 pages of executive summary, but behind as well 400 pages. So thank you, Athanasios, that you've read it and you are going to give us your takeaways, which can be a good start for our discussion with cluster community. And I would welcome you to join the discussion on how clusters are in all this competitiveness debate in the EU, what we contribute already as clusters, what we can contribute, what we could do better, and what we should focus both at the micro level, at the cluster, and as well at EU level, what we could do better in 2024-29. So thank you very much. I put the context, but now we go into more details. Athanasios, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and Marek, for the introduction and the nice words, and good morning to everybody. Our topic today is competitiveness. Can I have the next slide, please? And how clusters can contribute to the future of European competitiveness. Next slide, please. And let me start by saying that competitiveness is something that each organization in nature and everywhere does in order to evolve. Or if you want to see it another way, evolution is at the source of competitiveness. We do things up to a point, and then when things don't work, we have to adapt or perish. This is what happens in nature. So we have these various stages of evolution of organizations, of people, of companies, of any group that you might consider, individuals that are forming what we call here islands of excellence, clusters and assemblies of these individuals that are driven normally by specialization, that they can form centers of competence, and then superstructures, what we might call co-evolving ecosystems or meta-organizations or networks or whatever is your favorite collective characterization, that are driven by synergies. And this is exactly the point where we are today in the evolution of clusters, the evolution of businesses, in order to stay fit and competitive in a very challenging and changing environment. Next slide, please. What we are witnessing is a reversal of this so-called globalization movement. We have seen that for many years there was a lot of opportunities given to many countries with this distribution of tasks and other activities worldwide. But more recently, we see there is this trend reversing, so-called deglobalization, and this generates a new state, if you will, to European businesses, European SMEs, European clusters, that they have to deal with it. This is also manifested a lot with various signals like having European-sourced products. It's not only unique to Europe, the same trend happens in the US. And we can get inspiration from my scientific, let's say, discipline, which involves thermodynamics, chemical equilibria, reversible reactions, to really deal with this phenomenon, similar with a chemical reaction that has that can go either way. So the entire approach that I have had so far in this phenomenon of clustering and challenges that are appearing tries to apply these notions of chemical equilibria and reaction kinetics to understand the evolution of our environment and our organizations. Next slide, please. So this leads us to some global considerations. I won't dwell too much on it. I will just say that there is a common framework which has arisen out of this consideration, a synergetic framework that provides us with some tools to be able to deal with these challenges and considerations, a unified view of raw materials, where local sourcing is at a very important element. Scaling up by modularity, which is not what we have been doing so far, which has been mainly scaling up by size. How to exploit the latent potentials using the notions of network and complexity science. This leads us to synergies in order to have so-called symbiotic relationships and symbiotic approaches, and then be able to assess, and if we are able, guide also the multidimensional impacts that these activities have on the environment, society, and economy. And this is pictured in the next slide in what I call here the resource nexus, which is the framework that allows us to establish sustainable, resilient, and competitive relation and approaches. Next slide, please. We are not the only ones to face such challenges so far. We understand that each one operates over a certain microenvironment or in a certain ecosystem, but we also understand that there is a need to multiplex these multiple domains, from starting from business domain, entrepreneurial domain, innovation, research, education. And I dare say that in my notion of meta-organization or meta-clustering, I consider this synergy along the various domains as the forming constituent of the notion of meta-clustering. And this is just a natural step in the evolution of this organization approach that I have already outlined so far. So with this in mind, I went to read the Draghi report, and the first thing that came to mind is actually something from almost 80 years ago. Can I have the next slide, please? When another society, the American society just after the war, had to face similar problems. A very talented and unique person, Vannevar Bush, he's the founder of NSF, professor from MIT, wrote this very famous, at the time also, report, submitted to another president, President Roosevelt at the time, called Science, the Endless Frontier. And that report had 228 pages. It had only one mentioning of the word innovation. Actually, I have it here in my favorite sentence from the report. A nation which borrows its basic knowledge will be hopelessly handicapped in the race for innovation. And this brings us to Mario Draghi's report, 79, 80 years roughly after, 400 pages. And the word innovation is counted more than 500 times, 547 times actually. So we can see that there is this transition and change of focus, but still dealing with the same issues. My favorite sentence from the Draghi report is that to meet the objectives laid out in this report, a minimum annual additional investment of 750 to 800 billion euro is needed. Next slide, please. There are similarities in these reports, which I'm very happy to list, because this tells us that how we can draw inspiration from past approaches to similar problems, that scientific and technological progress is necessary, a prerequisite to drive economic growth and competitiveness, that there is a need for government involvement in supporting research and technology. There is a very important focus on human capital through education and skills development to stay competitive. There is a need for international collaboration to maintain global leadership in science and technology, and the importance of public-private cooperation to advance technological progress. There are, however, differences, as you might expect. These are completely two different settings that we are looking at. The Vannevar Bush report relies on basic research to lay the foundation for future technologies, while the Draghi report focuses on applied research and immediate innovation, you might say, to address the current challenges. The Draghi report emphasizes a large reliance on private sector investment, while the Bush report advocates for strong government funding of research without any specific reliance on private capital. Of course, the industry academia collaborations that are mentioned are very important. So far, we have the benefit of knowing what has been the evolution of the recommendation of the Bush report. The American system relies on it. Actually, it is one of the examples that inspires and also confronts Mario Draghi's report. He gets inspiration of our gap from the US. And I think it is important to have this in perspective when we discuss in more detail what we are dealing with today. Next slide, please. Coming to the role of clusters, I use this terminology similar to our activities, about clusters meet regions and clusters meet various organizations. So the clusters meet the Draghi report recommendations. And as it was already mentioned by Andrew and Marek, actually, the Draghi report recommendations are just a blueprint for guiding and surfacing up the various contributions that can be made by clusters. I will just touch on a few. Accelerating innovation. It is clear that clusters facilitate the collaborative R&D across industries, and by having shared R&D facilities, we can reduce the cost for the SMEs. There are examples of clusters like the Silicon Saxony in Germany. With respect to decarbonization, I like to call it more actually defossilization and the energy transition. The clusters promote joint investments, and they can foster also public-private partnership for improving the energy efficiency. With respect to security and reducing dependencies, the clusters can certainly build local supply chains, especially for critical materials, and reduce the external reliance. Strengthening the single market, it has already been addressed by a separate report, and it is clear that the clustering helps the business to navigate the regulatory barriers, and we can harmonize standards across borders. A clear example here has been the European automotive industry and its cluster network. With respect to financing investments, every time you can pull resources both from public and private, it's helpful, and you can mobilize these investments for innovation and infrastructures. And on the issue of governance and coordination, clearly there could be cluster-led governance models that can assist and provide examples to improve the competitiveness. And I have just listed some examples here. Next, please. I will not go through every sectoral policy. I just wanted to flash here, because the presentation will be available, specific cluster contributions for each of the sectoral policies that are of concern here: energy, critical raw materials, digitalization, semiconductors. Next slide, please. Clean technologies, automotive, defense. Next slide, please. Space and pharmaceuticals. We have with us colleagues from various sectors, from clusters, from various of these sectors that we could discuss and go into more detail. I just wanted to make the point that if clusters did not exist, they would have to be invented to form a very good instrument to address the issues that the Draghi report mentions and puts on the public debate. And there is a very good reason for this, that before I close my presentation, I would like to provide, again, drawing inspiration from chemical engineering. Clusters are at what we call in chemical engineering at the mesoscale. You have the small scale, the nanoscale, the scale of the individuals, and of the interactions between various components. You have the macro scale, which is the scale that we sense and we see the responses. But many things get determined at this mesoscale, where one can foster synergies, but also filter out unwanted behaviors or phenomena. And I think when we see clusters from that respect, that being a mesoscale that can provide the needed bridge, as in chemical engineering, between the individual actions and the macro results, we can understand both the significance and also the importance of doing things at that level. So with this, I would like to conclude, and thank you for your attention, and look forward to the discussion.
Athanasios, thank you very much indeed on behalf of all of the participants this morning. I think we're most grateful to you for giving us not only the important theoretical context, but guiding us through how the clusters can respond to many of the key recommendations in the Draghi report for promoting competitiveness. And indeed, I'm sure if you're able to share those slides, many people will want to just look at them very carefully and realize just how clusters are central to the implementation and achievement of the competitiveness agenda. Thank you for that. We'll come on to talk about exactly some of the things that you describe in our panel discussion. But as we run toward the panel discussion, we have an opportunity to hear pleas from all of our participants. If you use the QR code on the screen, please, to access the Slido questions, we're going to ask you 3 questions, the first of which is in order to ask you which you regard as the key cluster capabilities which contribute to European competitiveness. So do please, you can choose more than one, but don't feel obliged to choose more than one. What we are very interested to see is some of the balance of what people regard as the ways in which clusters can cooperate and collaborate to promote competitiveness. Let's have a look. So immediately, collaboration and the creation of networks is demonstrated. Innovation comes forward considerably. International partnerships. I noted that the Draghi report was very clear about just how important is the work of the European Cluster Collaboration Platform in promoting those international partnerships. The full value chains for SMEs to large companies, and of course within that for SMEs to be able to scale up and access the value chains that large companies are able to create. So that's a really helpful indication of some of the key capabilities which clusters can create. Let us, if I may, move on to our second question. Here we're going to ask you a question and look, please, to you to find some of the answers for yourselves, and we will create a bit of a word cloud derived from that, or isolate some of the things that people have to say about what are the measures or strategies that European clusters can adopt to improve European competitiveness. Clearly, some are in the Draghi report itself. I won't lead the witnesses too much, but viewed from the cluster community itself, what would you be looking for the European institutions and indeed for Europe more generally to be doing in order to improve competitiveness? Okay, so we have some responses coming through, and I can see that a number of our colleagues are typing as we speak. The ambition is important, we saw that early. International, the question of international partnerships and indeed these meta clusters going beyond the confines of geography. Building capabilities and facilitating investments is very important. I think in the Draghi report there was specific reference to the opportunities for funding and investment that are created by clusters. System innovation, we're going to hear a lot about the importance of innovation, and indeed, and as Professor Kostandopoulos very helpfully illustrated directly how innovation is the core of the synergies between domains from education and through to entrepreneurship. Private capital providers such as venture capital, very important. I can see a number of our colleagues are continuing to offer ideas. Cross-sector collaboration, increasingly important, of course, with digital and green transitions. The more cluster participants we see. I'll give it just a minute while we have more of the answers coming through, and our colleagues in the team, the cluster collaboration team, and indeed in DG Grow will be very glad to pick up all of these points that you are making here. Reaching out to private capital providers, important, more cluster participants. We haven't finished looking yet. We have more coming through. The relationship between government and the governments at a number of levels and clusters are terrifically important and are highlighted by one of our contributors there. Of course, clusters are in themselves ecosystems, but they are ecosystems often that promote innovation because they bring together not just participants in a particular market, but those who are able to access new technologies. So we see that coming through. The impact on society is important, and we've noticed at an earlier stage the importance of environmental sustainability that was mentioned, and the ability to connect to SMEs and to access opportunities for funding. That is terrifically important. Every time you talk to SMEs, they are very clear about the central importance of access to financing. Grand. I think we've had some fantastic contributions there. If colleagues are continuing to add ideas, they will be included in those that will be captured by the team. If I may, I'm going to move on now to the third question, where we're going to get a word cloud rather than just a large number of responses. So the question is, what is, in your opinion, are the most important factors for European competitiveness to thrive? So looking at the objectives of Mario Draghi's report to the European Commission, what are the factors that should, in your view, come out to the forefront of those who are thinking about competitiveness in Europe and how we are to drive it for the future? So we have these words coming forward. We have digitalization, obviously we'll have green transition as well there somewhere, ecological sustainability. We have some challenging remarks. Stop being naive, we are told. I'm not sure how naive we are being, but we'll do our very best to be not to be. SMEs are coming through. Of course, when you talk about innovation, very often it is SMEs who are central to some of the innovation activities. Access to capital, quite rightly, being illustrated there. So our word cloud is building up some of those things that we have been discussing and which Athanasios has been very helpfully giving us the context for. So let's let that word cloud rest there, and we'll come into the panel discussion now. Thank you very much indeed for all of your contributions to that. One of the, as you can see, we have a very expert panel derived from the cluster community yourselves, and looking at a number of different sectors and indeed a number of different technologies. So let's start with that question about innovation, because you'll recall that in that slide earlier, Athanasios was showing us how across a number of domains we can promote innovation between higher education, universities, and large businesses and innovative businesses. So let's go to Dr. Daniel Stadler first, if I may, and put Daniel, if you'd be kind enough, in addition to telling us something about what you are doing as cluster manager for the EIN Quantum Cluster in North Rhine-Westphalia, what can you tell us about that central question of how innovation can be promoted? Quantum is obviously that relationship with basic research and bringing those research opportunities through into the economic exploitation is at the heart of what you do. But can you tell us something about those innovative processes and how clusters can promote them?
Yeah, well, thank you, Andrew. Indeed, there is a very large amount of research that still needs to be done in the quantum field, and European Union with the quantum flagship is providing excellent support on that. But beyond that, the interaction between industry and science is extremely important in this field, because quantum has one specific, I'd say, a hardware-specific requirement, and this is extremely long-term development processes that you need in order to have the hardware available. But on the other hand, scientists all over the world, in fact, figured out that they need to have at least a hint from industry at what point that technology is ready to use. Because you have, on the one hand, and I think that is the importance of clusters here, that you really bring two cultures together. There is also a cultural aspect within innovation, and that is, on the one hand, you have scientific culture that is and has to be very precise to understand exactly everything within the machine to bring it to the maximum of what it can do. And on the other hand, you have industry that needs a product that can actually create a benefit for customers or for the industry sector. And bringing both aspects together in addition to publication and IP transfer, I think is very, very difficult, not in a sense difficult, but it needs a lot of interaction, at least a lot of interaction points. It needs meetings, it needs understanding, and it needs also translation. And I think this is where clusters can exactly help here. And with quantum for industry, with quantum for instance, I think it is important that on the one hand, industry is saying, yeah, okay, we want to use it for this and that. And the requirement is that it needs to be a factor X faster than the existing technology. And on the other hand, scientists can say, okay, well, that is doable within a time frame, potentially about 5, 10, 15, and so on years. And what we do here in North Rhine-Westphalia, no, it's not privately funded, any. It's, in this case, it's funded by our government, regional government. What we do it and how we do it is currently we are supporting our regional community in North Rhine-Westphalia by building a roadmap. So we bring together industry and scientific expertise to really identify how we can participate in the European ecosystem to reach out strength-based to push that technology for Europe forward.
Daniel, thank you very much. So you literally bring together research institutions and
Yes.
businesses. Does that include some of the SMEs and startups, the sort of innovative businesses who might look at quantum technologies and say, we can create wholly new approaches to meeting consumer demand?
Yes, that is a very, very important and vivid part of the overall ecosystem, because the large companies usually are not the ones that develop a quantum computer, as quantum computers, for instance, are rather machines that you use, and it's not a consumer product everyone of us would buy. We can buy it, okay, but I would not. I'm preferring my laptop here. But what I would prefer is to use a quantum computer through a software. So you need startups that are specialized to build those machines, to build the software, and within the whole process of innovation, you have research institutes and you have large consumers, for instance, the large companies. But in the middle, you need bridges, and these bridges are SMEs and startups that are so important pillar stones that actually that technology can enter the market, because SMEs are usually highly specialized, very, very precise, and often world market leaders in their specific segment where they really build their businesses on for decades. So they definitely know best what to do. And on the other hand, you have startups that really need to take the risk to get the venture capital and to start building quantum machines, even though we do not know when they will be ready, but someone needs to build them and someone needs to sell them. And universities, I think it's not their core aspect of selling a machine. Their core aspect is to really study those machines and to provide the knowledge and also the skilled labor that we need in order to work. And SMEs, by the way, are also providing a huge amount of skilled labor that we need, because we do not need overall academic industry workers. We need also people who learned at hand what this machine is all about.
Daniel, that's fascinating. Thank you very much for that description. I need to bring other members of the panel in. I'm going to ask Patricia Tamez, Deputy Director General of the AFM Cluster for Advanced and Digital Manufacturing Technologies, to come in now. I know, Patricia, you may have to leave before the end of the overall talk, so I wanted to bring you in at this stage. You'll have seen in the professor's excellent presentation how globalization, how he described globalization and deglobalization, some of these different reactions. But I wondered if you could perhaps put that in the context of manufacturing and how clusters in manufacturing are responding to some of the challenges that Athanasios was telling us about. We can't hear at the moment, Patricia. Can you just check that we've got sound? No sound at the moment, Patricia, I'm afraid.
What about now?
Yes,
Can you hear me now?
Well done.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
good.
thank you very much. Okay, and thank you very much, because I'm very happy to have the opportunity to be in this kind of debates. And I was very happy at reading Draghi's report, because I think that it says what we need to hear. Well, I will just say that manufacturing, well, we are in an important cluster, and as you know, is the strategic, and if a country wants to be competitive, we need manufacturing. I think that there is no discussion about it, and manufacturing is one of the key issues. The point is that we are very traditional, and manufacturing exists since lots of years ago. So as we are not a new cluster, a new technology, sometimes we have to say, hello, we are here because we are strategic, and don't forget about it. And why? Because we cannot lose manufacturing. Those countries who lost manufacturing and the machine tool industry, for instance, they could not get it back because it's a strategic sector, but it's very difficult to be born and be rise from zero. Manufacturing is a sector in which we are composed of lots of SMEs, and those SMEs build an ecosystem. And that ecosystem consists of people, very well-trained people, and lots of different types of companies that need to cooperate among themselves. We need to cooperate with research institutes, we need to cooperate with universities, we need to cooperate with our value chain industry, we need to cooperate with the end users, the automotive industry, the aerospace industry. So our sector, manufacturing sector, needs to cooperate. And that's the reason why clusters are so important, because it's a strategic sector. Is being alone, we are very little, and it's difficult to raise our hand in different forums, but at the same time, cooperation is a must. And we have to be very innovative, and we need to have very well-trained people. So this is what we are trying to say, and that's why we were happy reading the Draghi's report, because he says what we are saying all the time. We need to be very innovative, we need very well-trained people, and we have to keep our traditional sectors as the key important sectors to be competitors. It's good to be global, but we have to keep in Europe our strategic sectors, and manufacturing is the basic. Is the sector that makes competitive the aerospace, the defense, the automotive sector, and so on. So, well, I think it's quite clear the need of cooperation and the need of clusters in this kind of industry.
Yes, thank you. Patricia, can you just tell us a bit more? Do you, in practice, are we seeing clusters that are developing in sectors, developing innovation, and in the process realizing that through digitalization, maybe through advanced manufacturing technologies, they are able to bring manufacturing capabilities back into Europe cost effectively, whereas in the past it was simply a calculation of labor cost that drove outsourcing, and that some of that now can be reversed?
Well, digitalization is an opportunity in different ways. Thanks to this digitalization, manufacturing can give new services to the end user. This is new business models and so on. But at the same time, digitalization is going to help us to be more competitive. We can make things cheaper, and we can make things more, more productive. So for us, digitalization is a must. The thing is that digitalization is a very broad topic, and we have to make SMEs understand what it means. In the cluster, some years ago, we were talking about, Industry 4.0, trying to make SMEs understand what was the meaning. Now we are saying that we have to introduce digitalization in a competitive way and in an effective way. And if not, don't start doing anything. First thing, why do you need it, and what are you going to do with it? So we need to introduce these issues, but in a very effective and productive way. And that's what clusters are trying to do, try to translate the concepts into practical best practices so that companies can be more productive and at the same time think of new business models. That's more or less in a few words.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you. We completely understand if you have to leave us before the end of the talk, but thank you very much for those contributions. Let me turn, if I may, to Luis Martins, President of Cluster Portugal Mineral Resources. If I could perhaps ask you to tell us something about how access to some of these key materials, raw materials, is impacting on competitiveness in Europe. The professor was illustrating what an interconnected global economy looks like. But if we're building comparative advantage, we want to have access to resources and to use them more productively. Is that something that you are able to tell us something about how that is being achieved with your cluster based in Portugal?
Thank you so much for, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation and for the opportunity to be here. And thank you also, Andrew, for the coordination of the debate and for your question. Let me reply to a question returning to the Draghi report, which in my opinion will be our Bible in the next years. I really hope that the governments of our European member states read the report and will follow some recommendations of that. And the report is very clear about that, about the importance of raw materials, of mineral raw materials. You cannot be competitive with a dependence on raw materials from outside Europe like we are having today. Like Patricia said, we cannot lose manufacturing, but we also cannot lose raw materials. Mineral raw materials are the basis of several industrial value chains. And in fact, in the last 20 years, we have been losing raw materials in Europe. So the Draghi report is very clear about that. We must increase our domestic production of raw materials, especially of critical raw materials. We cannot have a green transition, just energetic transition, digitalization, decarbonation without raw materials. And we believe that there is a crucial role for clusters on that, because in building that, we must be innovative and helping our companies to be more sustainable in their process and products. And how can we do that? Is exactly joining research centers, academia, to these companies, and like that, improving their competitiveness, improving their performance economically, environmentally, and social. And that's actually what we have been doing in the last years. We have about 100 members. Most of them are private companies. Most of them are small and medium enterprises. But we also have the best academic institutions and the best research centers dealing with mineral raw materials in Portugal. And that's a key for the success, is exactly to join those types of institutions and develop projects improving their capability to be more competitive.
Thank you very much. Can I just, if I may, just ask, from the point of view of the Draghi report, one of the things it talks about the possibility for clusters, and indeed for the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, to promote international partnerships, and indeed for Europe to exploit its, which Marek referred to, the scale of the single market as a mechanism for ensuring through trade agreements, for example, with trusted partners like Canada, Japan, and South Korea are instanced in the Draghi report, to ensure that we access markets, but also access resources and have more resilient supply chains. Is that, from your point of view, is that a strategy that the clusters can indeed pursue and be significant players?
Yes, I fully agree with that. International cooperation and trade agreements with some parts of the world that are stable geopolitically is also very important. We cannot have a sustainable and secure supply of raw materials only increasing our domestic production. So that's very important. But if we look at the clusters, I believe that that the international cooperation makes sense if we have critical mass to do that. And for that, I believe that it's very important to have a Euro cluster dedicated to raw materials. And we are working on that. We hope to present soon an application for being recognized with the Eurocluster. And with the Eurocluster will be much more easy to cooperate with those parts of the world like Canada, like the USA, like some countries of South America and Latin America. I believe that will be very important. But if we do as member states in the European Union, I believe that we will not have enough strength to be successful on that. So if we have a Euro cluster dedicated to that, will be much more easy to connect with those parts of the world.
Super. Thank you very much indeed. May I turn, please, if I may, to Hikma Tagali, who is Vice President of the Council of European Bioregions. So, Hikma, you are very much involved in some of the key emerging technologies in life sciences and related areas. Can you tell us something from your perspective? What do you think clusters would look for, and how would they respond to some of the strategies in Mario Draghi's report? What sort of strategies really matter to you and your cluster most?
Okay, first of all, thanks for hearing us out and inviting SIBR to be part of this exchange. Just to give a context, SIBR, which is the Council of European Bioregion, is a membership network of 45 health and life science clusters across Europe. So we represent a critical mass of SMEs in hundreds of universities and research centers. The Draghi report highlighted like significant challenges like in the EU's pharma sector, such as fragmented R&D funding, complex regulatory processes, despite like research efforts, though, such as clinical trial regulations, etc. But after like it's been like a couple of months when some clusters from SIBR like did an initiative under the INACSE project, which is like a project that regrouped several clusters from SIBR, so at a European level, to work on our strategy to become more innovative and to increase our capabilities for our sector. And for this is, I'm going to link the two with the Draghi report. We did like, it was in March, a workshop with 4 investors, 4 SMEs from 6 SMEs from the different sectors, biotech, medtech, pharma, digital health sector, and some institutional representatives. The idea here was to understand why there has been like a drop in fundraising for SMEs in the last few years. And for the, like the different results that we got, first of all, is like so fundraising by health investment funds dropped from 60% to 16% to 9%. And a European specificity is that government agencies are the largest funders of European VC. Now, I'm also the head of European Affairs of Medicine, and I'm Medicine Paris Région, which is like the Paris region health cluster. And I'm just going to give you like an example. In France, 6,000 billion represents the total savings of the French, which is twice the public debt. Half of it is managed by institutional investors, and they're reluctant to put funds in VC and startups. So to be able, just also some very important matter, for example, in France, all aid, all public action is conditioned by private funding. So particularly like industrial or fundraising. So public action alone is not sufficient to bring about innovation. It is indeed the synergy of the two that will actually accelerate and develop competitiveness. So purely public actions cannot be effective for the economy. And we've noticed recently, so the decline of its investment level, private funding is becoming like a real challenge for SMEs. And so the two worlds, like private funding and public funds, must work together to drive like sustainable economic growth. And this is exactly also where clusters also can have a role in this. So first of all, like, I mean, fundraising is something very important for the members that we represent, for the SMEs that we represent, that can like go forward step by step in their innovation. And if this is something that is being particularly blocked, and investors are being less and less inclined to invest in health innovative solutions, this is something that should be also regarded, because this actually will support the competitiveness also of the EU. We need this. And so we also, during that workshop with the different EU health clusters project, we also tried to see what are the different obstacles in each sector. I'm not going to go into detail here of the different sectors, but there was one thing that kept coming again and again. It's the fact that investors want to have like preliminary actions where there is like the de-risking phase for them then to be able to invest more. So the shout out, like the key takeaway that we got also from this workshop is, how can we also at a European level use the different programs that we have, or how can these different programs be oriented in de-risking the different phases that actually are seen as a blockage for investors, because we need both public and private funding to be able to move forward.
Thanks, Hikmet. Thank you very much. That's really fascinating. Can I just ask one additional question? The Draghi report talks about the role of clusters in securing some of the regulatory harmonization, and in trying to enable businesses to meet the regulatory requirements more cost effectively. Is that part of that process you described of de-risking? Is the regulatory environment part of that public-private partnership which clusters are so noted for?
Regulatory challenges has become like, I'm sorry, I have like the flu, so I'm a bit my voice is
we might have to find you an even better medicine.
So I'm sorry. So regulatory challenges and access, even like process like CE markings, has also been like one of the main topics of that workshop. It was really and I'm really sorry to say this, but this is what came out of that workshop. SMEs found it easier to go and develop themselves. Like for instance, this is something that came up in that workshop in the US because of the facility and the less obstacles that it actually represented to them. And obviously, when there were also institutional participants in that workshop, this was like not very it was not very positive for us to hear this kind of things. But the fact that, for example, in the biotechnology sector, they have like several operational challenges, and there is need for substantial funding to cover long, costly, risky development cycles to navigate that complex regulatory environment that actually require specialized resources, which are often inaccessible for early stage companies, and technical and regulatory complexities that is related to the scaling up of production, particularly for products also containing innovative living components. These are indeed big challenges, and which can also be answered through that de-risking and facilitating a stage. And what the investors told us, like we should think about the value creating milestones that can be achieved also. For example, I'm going to say in the biotechnology sector, in preclinical and clinical trials to reduce risk for investors, strategic partnerships, for instance, with pharmaceutical companies that bring capital and expertise, securing patents that protect innovations and demonstrate market potential. So yes, indeed, we need like to rethink like the funds for this type of support for the SMEs, and maybe also increase the capabilities of us clusters to be able like to help them out in all this like complex regulatory environment that they are in.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for managing to explain so brilliantly, notwithstanding your current difficulties with the flu. So let me come to Diego Carvalho, if I may. you're part of the Aerospace Valley. You're European project manager at Aerospace Valley. Perhaps put a very simple question to you. You're a very famous cluster, as it were, but what is it, in your view, that makes a cluster successful?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and giving me the opportunity to participate to this debate, and thank you for your question. Just to give you a little bit of context. So as you said, I'm from Aerospace Valley. We are an aerospace cluster. So when you say aerospace, you can find a wide typology of members among us. To say everything, on the side of aerospace, we have 800 members, and among them 500 SMEs. And among those members, you can find people from the aeronautics sectors, so both subcontractors, but also large companies. You can find people from the space sectors, so space applications, Earth observation, for example, but also space infrastructure, the rocket launchers, for example. And then next to that, we also do drones, so how to build a drone, but also how to stop them. So among this wide typology of members, we needed to find transversal axes, to orientate our action. And the one that we found, and that are quite common to the three main sectors that I mentioned, are materials, for example, data, manufacturing, circular economy, embedded systems. And so it's through those transversal axes that we orientate our action. And so what is the action among those axes? It's mainly to foster innovation, as it has been mentioned since the beginning of this webinar. So what do we do for innovation? Or at least our main strategy on the side of Aerospace Valley is to support the member, if it is an SME, a large company, or a laboratory, to the full TRL scale. So starting with the idea from the genius that can be found in a laboratory, to the product or service ready to be commercialized. So this is the strategy of Aerospace Valley. Something that we need to keep in mind when we are talking about clusters is to know and to be conscious about what is the final aim of the cluster. The final aim of the cluster is for its members to foster the economic growth and ecological sustainability. So why economic growth? Because we need our members to stay alive, of course, and to have the means to invest in their R&D to continue to be active. And sustainability, and it has been mentioned on the side of critical materials and raw materials. We need to have our members to be able to continue their activity in the future, so in the long term. We need our companies to be sustainable and to, in, I don't know, 5, 10, 20 years, to still be relevant in the European world. So this is the main aim of Aerospace Valley, and this is the main strategy. And we talked a lot about the activities that clusters undertake, to support the companies or the laboratories, at least some members. Something that I want to put the emphasis is that okay, we are animators of communities, we are gatherers of different types of actors, but there is a trap that we need to avoid, is to be disconnected from the research world, from the industry, from the businesses, and just be animators. And the best way to avoid this trap is to remain close to the members, to have individual contact, to go on the field, to know the problematics and understand the language. And a good practice that we establish at Aerospace Valley is that we have people from enterprises, from SMEs, from laboratories that work at Aerospace Valley and that give their time to support the other members. We have people, for example, from large companies that give their time to support SMEs or laboratories. And this is quite important for us. And I like actually the comparison that Athanasios did with the mesoscale. We have dozens, hundreds of members, host clusters. So we need to be able to work with this vast mass of different companies, of different laboratories, and we need to find the good interaction between them. But at the same time, the individual work is quite important for the clusters.
Diego, is it when investment is attracted into a cluster, is it to what extent is that about the availability of skills and the fact that the cluster creates a large pool of skilled labour in relation to those sector or sectors that are working in the cluster. Is that, and I think it's one of the things the Draghi report talked about, how EU institutions can support clusters through training and skills development. Is that, although people skills in Europe going to be increasingly important in clusters?
People skills is actually a huge priority for us clusters right now, in particular in the aerospace sector. The main example, concrete example that I can provide actually is that right now you have big players like Ariane Group, like Dassault Aviation, like Thales, that are putting a maximum of efforts in the training of their newcomers. So the old ones with experience are often mobilized to, you know, provide time to support the young ones and to be able to continue, because talking about sustainability and talking about even competitiveness with big players like the US or even China, we need to be able to keep the pace. This is why the skills are quite important for us, to those examples.
Super. Thank you very much, Diego. Thank you. And thank you to all of our panelists for those really helpful insights into how the clusters are contributing to future competitiveness. I thought Professor Konstantopoulos gave us a fabulous presentation. I thought that was really helpful. The Draghi report is very clear, not only about what Europe needs for greater competitiveness in the future, but of the role that clusters can play in that critical connection of public and private cooperation to deliver education and research, to support that innovation from that research activity into entrepreneurship, but the private sector, and of course bringing investment in, and the private sector turning it into competitive delivery of goods and services. That's absolutely critical, and that's where clusters play that part. We covered a lot of ground, and I can't possibly summarize all of that, but I did think it was really useful to see what our participants were saying. The importance of innovation, the importance of SMEs came through very strongly, and the desirability of working increasingly, as I think Luis was reminding us, the ability to work in not just in clusters, but in meta clusters, using, for example, in his particular example, the power of clusters across Europe to work together on ensuring access to raw materials, and indeed building that kind of supply chain resilience, which Marek reminded us we discovered that we needed and was so critical during the course of, for example, the pandemic. Just as we are also discovering what the opportunities look like through digital and green transition to create new competitive opportunities in Europe. So on that basis, thank you very much indeed to all of our panelists, once again, for your very helpful, very insightful contributions. Before we close, I want to turn, if I may, to Angela, who's going to tell us something about the funding opportunities that lie ahead.
Yeah, thank you again, Andrew, and thank you all the panelists for such an interesting debate. We will present some funding opportunities. First of all, we have zero pollution cities. The deadline is until 11th February, and the projects are expected to contribute to improved methods for assessing pollution exposure, to better assessment of pollution exposure, enhance understanding of behavioral, economic, psychology, and organizational behavior, to design more effective measures, and also comparative analysis. We have also a demand-led innovation through public procurement, and in this occasion, projects are expected to contribute to strengthened EU civil security capabilities, enhanced collaboration between demand and supply sectors, cross-cutting knowledge creation and synergy building and clustering initiatives. Deadline is 20 November 2024. We have also the opportunity of presenting projects for living labs in urban areas for healthy soils. Projects are expected to contribute to increased capacities for participatory, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary R&I, enhance soil health in rural and urban areas, improved accessibility of practice-oriented knowledge, tools, and technique, and increased awareness among policy makers. The deadline is 8th October 2024. And still, we have non-thematic development actions by SMEs, which have been mentioned in various occasions during the debate. Projects in this case must contribute to the following outcomes: that's innovative and cost-effective anti-defense solutions, increased involvement of SMEs, application of groundbreaking technologies, potential for future market creation, and strengthened European defense supply chain. Deadline would be 5 November. Also, we don't want to forget opportunities from Euroclusters also mentioned. We have Friends CCI, we have the Gemstone, we have Ingenious, Resist, training and coaching and mentoring, and the automotive. We have also Build, EU Second Call, and Sileo. And you can learn more about all these calls on the website of the Cluster Collaboration Platform. Thank you very much.
Angela, thank you very much. Thank you. And it's very helpful, I know, to all of the clusters to bring together so not only the future funding opportunities, but also, as you did earlier, some of the news of the events that are upcoming. Thank you for that. We want to continue the discussion. If you wish to, that's available through the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, the general discussion group, and the link is posted there. I believe it is the case, as somebody was asking in the chat, that the slides will be shared and people will be able to, not least, to gain access to some of that most interesting analysis by our professor earlier. So thank you all very much indeed for being with us this morning. It's been a fascinating discussion. As I think somebody was saying, the Mario Draghi report may be one of our Bibles for a Bible for future discussion. But the key, I know that Mario Draghi himself would say, the key is not so much to analyze, but it is to do it and to make it happen. So clusters are going to be central to that. So a big thank you to all of you who are our participants in your clusters for all that you are doing, and indeed for all that you will be doing in order to promote competitiveness in Europe. Thank you very much indeed for your participation this morning. Do please have a very good and safe day.